I think I'm being stalked. I'm in the process of applying for a new job and started contacting various places to see if they were hiring/sending in my resume. About 3 weeks ago, I got a text from a director saying that texting would be easier to keep in touch about filling out my application and setting up interviews. I ended up meeting with him twice, one to see the facility and two for an interview, about 2 weeks ago. Since then, he's passively said things such as how pretty I am, that I would be the perfect fit, etc., but no actual updates on the job. He's also tried asking me out multiple times, but he tries to make it seem like we would be talking about the job. I've tried not to reply as much as possible, and have been ignoring him because I don't want to work with someone like that. Yesterday, he messaged me to tell me that he was sending flowers to my apartment building. I never gave him my address directly, but it was on my application. I said thanks and then ignored him because I was freaked out. Today, he asks if we could meet up for coffee because he's in my neighborhood. I didn't respond. About 2 hours later, I took my dog for a walk, passed by a coffee shop that is 2 streets over from my apartment building, and he was sitting in a booth right next to the window. We didn't make direct eye contact and I honestly couldn't tell exactly if it was him. I kept walking and he almost immediately texted me asking if that was me he just saw/did I want to come back to the coffee shop. I didn't reply. I live in a huge city, so what are the chances that he was at that coffee shop in my neighborhood that close to my apartment just by chance? Was he just waiting for my response that whole time? Am I being paranoid about being stalked? Sorry if this is all over the place. Guy followed me from gym, to grocery store, to my home. I'm a small woman, 28. There is a guy at the gym who I've noticed follows me around while I work out. Today I noticed he was sticking around longer than usual. I ended my workout and noticed he was sitting in his car. I got in my car and drove away. He ducked so I didn't see him as I drove by. I brushed it off and went to the grocery store. When I came out he was parked a couple stalls away again, ducking but watching me. My hairs raised at this point. I got in my car and started driving home. He followed me all the way to my apartment. I ran inside and locked the door and watched him circle my parking lot 3 times. My apartment complex has a lot of doors, so I don't think he knows which one is mine. My stalker became my roommate's boyfriend. The summer after I graduated high school, I was still living at home. I was up late once night and was packing for a camping trip with my friends. It was unbelievably hot and had the window open as I sat and folded clothes. It was around 2 in the morning and the next thing I knew, there was a hand coming through the gap in the screen of my window. I screamed and the hand flew back out. I was stunned, but there was a part of me that wondered if it was my younger brother pranking me. I got up and looked out the window and just saw the figure of a man staring back at me. I ran into my brother's room and he was there playing video games. We called the police, who came and searched the area. They found nothing, warned me and my parents to lock the windows and doors, and left. We were all still shaken up and my mom had a feeling that he would come back. It turns out her mother's intuition was right. She went outside and waited on our back porch. After 20 minutes or so, she saw a man, dressed in black, slink into our backyard along the tree line. There wasn't a fence on that side, unfortunately. He hid behind a tree for a few seconds and ran to another tree and hid there, slowly working his way towards my window. My mother yelled something to him and he took off running. The police came back out and again, found no trace of him. I never opened that window again, not even the curtains. My parents installed some motion detecting lights and that seemed to be the end of that. About 6 months later, my friend and I got an apartment downtown together. We were really excited as this was our first place on our own. The apartment wasn't exactly the best quality, but it was so fun to be living in the city. The downside was that it was street parking only. After a few weeks, my car was broken into. Nothing was taken but a single rose sat on the passenger's seat. It was creepy, but I vowed to be vigilant and safe. I always tried to park close to the entrance, near the lights. But often, it was difficult to get those spots and I would often have to park farther away. On darker streets, things quickly began escalating at this point. My car was broken into at least once a week. Most of the time, a flower was left, which I always threw on the ground, but once a pair of men's underwear was left. And even more creepily, once a bag of Tootsie Rolls, as they were my favorite candy. This made me wonder if the person knew me personally, and I stared to become suspicious of everyone. There was a laundry in the basement of the apartment, and one day I went down to get a load that finished drying. As I started to fold, I realized all of my undergarments, bras, and panties were gone. Another week I had a male friend over from school and his tires got slashed during the visit. By the time the first letter arrived, I had already started making plans to move elsewhere. The letter described a love for me that had been going on for years. He noted things that proved he had been watching me closely. I was able to arrange for another friend to take over my lease, and I moved in with another friend on the other side of the city. It was a secured building and had an underground parking garage that was only accessible to tenants. I felt much more secure, and the extra money spent was well worth the peace of mind. Things were quiet for a few months. And then my roommate got a boyfriend. Most of us were wary of Ashley's new boyfriend from the beginning. For one, they met on MySpace after he reached out to her. Another reason was that new boyfriend, Matt, was extremely good-looking. And while Ashley was a wonderful person, she just wasn't the type you would typically expect someone like him to date. Ashley was thrilled. She had never had a boyfriend and really felt like he was her Prince Charming. I thought he was weird and creepy from the beginning. Matt was on the quiet side and always seemed to be sporting an uncomfortable, leering smile. It was difficult to carry on any sort of a conversation with him because he would always make it weird with some random facts that were completely unrelated to what we were talking about. I had deleted my MySpace when the initial stalking began, but I created a dummy account to learn more about Matt. It didn't look like he really knew any of his friends in real life. There were only pictures of himself, and the rest of the information was vague. My friends and I gently tried to discourage her from seeing Matt. He technically hadn't done anything wrong, but he was just so strange. She would immediately get defensive and would shut the conversation down. Matt started to spend more time at the apartment, and I found myself finding any excuse I could to avoid coming home. One day I came home from work and found Matt on my couch, alone, drinking a beer. Ashley had been called into work and she told him he could just hang out. I was furious because I didn't want to spend any time with him, so I grabbed a beer and a snack and headed off to my room and shut the door. About 30 minutes or so, he knocked on my door and suggested we watch some TV and get to know each other better because we both loved Ashley. I didn't want to, but decided that maybe I needed to give it a try. He put on a movie and I tried to just focus on the movie because I didn't want to talk. At one point, I glanced over to Matt and he was staring at me with a smile on his face. I snapped at him and he just continued smiling and said, "I just can't believe it." "Believe what?" I asked. He said nothing and went back to watching the movie, still smiling. I had no idea what he was talking about, but the interaction had every hair standing up on my body. I excused myself and locked the door to my room. Another month or so went on and I had managed to avoid being home for much anything beyond sleep and showering. Matt practically lived there and had even brought a bunch of his things into Ashley's room. I really didn't want to move again, but was beginning to look for other options. On their 6-month anniversary, I saw a huge bouquet of flowers on the table and an already opened card propped up next to it. I rolled my eyes and was about to leave when I decided to see what the weirdo wrote to her. When I opened the card, my heart started beating through my chest. Without even reading the words he wrote, I was shaking. The handwriting was exactly the same as the one my stalker had sent. I had kept them as evidence and dug them out of my desk for comparison. The handwriting was unique and identical. Matt was the stalker. I called the police first. As they were on the way, I called Ashley and asked her to come over. She was at work but said she would be there when she could. I was terrified to tell her because I knew she would be shattered. The police took a statement from me and actually went to Ashley's work to get more information from her, and they ended up breaking the news. Apparently, Ashley called Matt and left a furious message even though the cops told her not to say anything, and he completely disappeared after that. There was no Matt or anyone matching his resemblance at the place he said he worked. Ashley had never been to his apartment because he said had been staying with friends while trying to save money for a trip to Europe. His family lived out of state and she had never met a friend of his because he said they had a falling out because he was choosing to spend so much time with Ashley. It was all lies, and in the end, she was dating a stranger. We don't even know if Matt was his real name. The cherry of the top of this whole thing was when we went through Matt's things. He had left everything when we disappeared, and Ashley and I decided to go through everything. There was a duffel bag that was full of gym clothes. But in one of the compartments, there were about 10 pictures of me. All were taken from far away, with the exception of one of me sleeping. The sheets were current, so I know it had to have been at the current apartment, before I started locking my bedroom door. A few pictures dated back to before the incident at my parents' house, which made us think that was him as well. 2 pairs of my missing underwear were there, and I shudder to think of what he did with the rest. A Starbucks lid with my red lipstick marks. A necklace I hadn't even noticed missing. A few other random sick souvenirs. The police never tracked him down. I decided to accept an opportunity overseas that I had been considering and got the hell out of there. Unfortunately, Ashley and I quickly drifted apart. She had a really hard time accepting that her first love was a complete psycho. I think I had some underlying anger, maybe misplaced, for believing all of his lies and letting him into our lives. I don't know what his end game was. Would he have tried to hurt me? Or was he simply content with being in my world? I'll never know. Being stalked changes you. Even when I lived across the world, I looked over my shoulder everywhere I went. I still have no social media accounts attached to my real name. I am married with children and know that he moved on to torment some other poor woman. But every time I visit my hometown, I am tense and keep a low profile. Part of me will always worry that Matt will resurface again,